Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, Lyta Alexander. And here we go. But first, if you wouldn't mind, give us a like and hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Lyta Alexander was a human telepath, assigned by the Psi Corps to Babylon 5 to serve as the station's licensed commercial telepath. She was later physically altered by the Vorlons. Lyta Alexander was born December 10, 2225, at the Syria Planum colony. A sixth-generation telepath, Alexander's talents manifested early, and she was taken by the Psi Corps and raised in Cadre Prime on Earth when she was only a few years old. This is in contrast to her mother, who was a P2 with abilities that did not manifest early enough for her to become a member of Cadre Prime, and was never formally attached to the Corps due to her own mother's Natasha's connections. Alexander, like her grandmother, was a P5. Though she had little contact with her blood family, she saw enough of her mother to remember her stories of her grandmother working for the old director Vassett, even showing her an old picture of him. Even while in Teep Town, Alexander's grandmother would often bring her presents, though they always came through the grins. Alexander always knew it was her grandmother who sent them. While training at the academy, she met and became friends with Talia Winters, though the two would later go their separate ways when Winters went to train as a commercial telepath, while Alexander opted to join Metapol's intern program. Acting as a profiler for the Psi Corps, Alexander was on Beta Colony when a local mundane serial killer began targeting telepaths exclusively. Eventually, the Psycop, Alfred Bester, was called in from Mars to investigate, and Alexander was assigned as his field agent. Though the local police didn't seem overly interested in catching the perp, Bester and Alexander used unauthorized and unwarranted scans to track him down and eventually capture him. Rather than arrest him and expose their own activities, the killer's mind was implanted with horrific visions that drove him to the point where he could spend the rest of his life confined to a mental institute screaming at the things they'd put in his head, and be forcibly restrained to prevent him from clawing his own eyes out. The experience was the first time her absolute loyalties to the Corps was shaken. Soon after, Alexander transferred out of the Psycop program and went into commercial telepath work instead. Between the year 2247 and 2257, she worked as a commercial telepath for Xenocorp, which involved monitoring corporate negotiations with alien representatives, including the Narn, Centauri, and the Pakmara. On January 3, 2257, Alexander was assigned to Babylon 5 as the station's first commercial telepath. She began mediating deals and also received an odd proposition from Ambassador Shakar for a deal to sell her DNA, since the Narn did not have telepaths. The day after she arrived, there was an assassination attempt on the Vorlon ambassador Kosh. To discover the person who had done this, Laurel Takashima and Benjamin Kyle asked her to conduct an unauthorized scan on Kosh. Alexander initially dismissed this, but, seeing the consequences, agreed and was eventually able to view Kosh's last moments. Surprisingly, she saw Commander Jeffrey Sinclair as the attempted assassin. However, the real culprit was a Mimbari assassin, using a changeling net. She encountered the assassin leaving MedLab, appearing as Alexander herself. A week later, she was recalled to Earth, as the Psi Corps wanted to question her about what she experienced while inside Kosh's mind. In a coincidence, her old friend Talia Winters was later assigned to serve the position she had vacated on Babylon 5. After months of being interrogated about her experiences with Kosh, she escaped Psi Corps custody and began working with the Martian Resistance. While in hiding with the Resistance, Alexander learned of the Psi Corps sleeper program, finding out that one of these sleepers was on Babylon 5. She discovered the password required to unlock this hidden personality and traveled to Babylon 5. Unsure of who it could be, Alexander scanned the minds of all the command staff, but was unable to find the sleeper among them. By chance, Winters walked into the room, and Alexander scanned her mind, unlocking the hidden personality. The second personality then took complete control, effectively destroying the real Talia Winters. Alexander then traveled to the edge of Vorlon space in an attempt to make it to the Vorlon homeworld. She paid a ship captain to bring her to the edge of Vorlon space and sent a signal, but after waiting for an extended period of time without a response, the captain decided to leave. Determined not to give up, she paid the captain the last of her credits for a life pod, sending a telepathic signal into Vorlon space in the hopes of a response. After drifting in space for 5 days, nearly out of supplies and oxygen, she was picked up by the Vorlons and taken to their homeworld. While there, she was modified physically and mentally. Her regular telepathic abilities enhanced dramatically. She was given gill implants, which allowed her to breathe in an alien atmosphere. In 2260, she returned to Babylon 5 and served as an aide to Ambassador Kosh. The Vorlons provided Alexander with protection from the Psi Corps, along with paid living quarters on the station and a salary for her services. Part of her duties included carrying part or all of Kosh's essence around inside her. Alexander also aided the crew in ways a normal Psi Corps member couldn't. She forcefully scanned a Centauri telepath who aided a man who kidnapped and tortured Edward in order to find out where he had taken Edward. Alexander was also approached by Malari, who tried to blackmail her in giving him details of Vorlon territory. She threatened to give him nightmares if he didn't back off. Alexander was off station on an assignment from Kosh when he was murdered by the Shadows. She was not carrying part of him at the time, but was hopeful someone else might have had a piece, though her initial search was fruitless. This did not sit well with Kosh's successor, Alkish, whom she subsequently assisted. Once Captain Sheridan and the crew learned that the telepaths could be used to disrupt and slow the Shadow vessels, Alexander was asked to help them prove it. She accompanied Sheridan aboard the White Star, and they located a lone Shadow vessel. At first, the experience was too much for her, but when Sheridan touches her, she has a vision of Kosh's death. Enraged over the brutality of Kosh's death, Alexander was able to affect the Shadow ship, keeping it immobile long enough for the White Star to destroy it. After the battle, she began to suspect Sheridan himself might have part of Kosh within him. Afterwards, Alkish becomes more secretive. He refuses to come to the council meetings, and all but ignores any request by Delenn. She asks him to help her assemble a fleet and go to Zahadum, but Alkish flatly refuses. After carrying Alkish for a brief time, he gives her leave for a while. She goes to Susan Ivanova with a desperate plan to go to Zahadum and try to locate Sheridan. She explains that she believes Sheridan was successfully touched by Kosh to allow her to find him, and that she has the strength to delay the Shadows long enough. Ivanova and Delenn bring her aboard the White Star, and they head for the Shadows' homeworld. Once in orbit, Alexander is nearly overwhelmed, but is able to stall them just long enough for a few scans. They find no trace of Sheridan, and head back to the station. Alkish treated Alexander even more harshly. Among other things, he made her get rid of everything in her quarters, save her mattress as a means to limit her apparent distractions. Delenn believes that the Vorlons are now hiding something from them, and asks Alexander to find out what it is. Alexander is afraid to oblige, saying that while Kosh personally might have cared for the younger races, she's starting to believe that the rest of the Vorlons do not. After carrying Alkish again, she confronts him with his secrets, but he refuses to answer. Angry, she demands respect from the Vorlon, but he only mocks her. In desperation, she attempts to scan his mind. Alkish violently knocks her to the ground, overwhelming her with a flood of painful images of the Vorlons' intentions. They plan to wipe out everyone who had been touched by the Shadows, including entire planets. Ivanova finds Alexander terrified and in shock, and manages to help pull herself together. Ivanova lets everyone know, including Sheridan, seemingly back from the dead, that she has evidence of her own confirming Alexander's story. Alexander helps drive Alkish from the station with the help of the remaining fragments of Kosh. She soon found herself without any direction when the Vorlons departed beyond the rim. Although she was involved in the Third Space incident, where hidden elements of her Vorlon transformations took over and helped defeat the aliens from Third Space, With the Vorlons gone, Alexander lost the financial support they provided as well as their protection from the Psi Corps. Since her savings would not last forever, she set out trying to find work. But because she was a rogue telepath, nobody would hire her. Michael Garibaldi saw the problems she was having and tried to hire her to help him work for Edgar Industries, but the company's head vetoed this plan. After this, she did not have the means to continue on her own, so she reluctantly had to turn to Alfred Bester. In order to ensure her cooperation with this agreement, Bester expertly manipulated Alexander by playing on her need for income, and on her feelings of being used and thus discarded by the senior officers. In exchange for her removal from the rogue list and adding her name to a list of Psi Corps covert operatives, she would agree to a written power of attorney to hand over her bodily remains to the Corps upon her death, so they could better understand what the Vorlons had done to her. She begrudgingly took the deal, and once again became the station's resident commercial telepath. After rejoining the Psi Corps, Alexander became more self-centered, using her abilities only when she was paid for it. In one instance, she made it clear to Zach Allen that an additional stress fee of 10% would be required when scanning an assault victim if she had to relive the attack while inside the victim's mind. She played a major role in the final battle of the Earth Alliance Civil War, sending out a signal to the shadow-enhanced telepaths smuggled aboard the ships loyal to Clark by the Martian resistance to interfere with their operations during the Battle of Mars. During this mission, she also helped Garibaldi prove his innocence in that he had been an unwilling pawn in turning Sheridan over to the Earth authorities. In early 2262, Alexander became romantically involved with Byron Gordon, the leader of the colony of rogue telepaths, who were offered sanctuary aboard Babylon 5. During an evening of physical intimacy, she dropped her mental barriers and projected her memories to the colony residents, revealing that the Vorlons had created human telepaths to be used as tools in a war against the shadows. Shocked and enraged by what he had seen in Alexander's mind, Byron and his followers proceeded to illegally scan the alien ambassadors aboard Babylon 5 to discover their secrets. Byron later confronted the ISA Council with what his people had done, demanding a homeworld for his own people in exchange for keeping the secrets his people had found. Matters quickly went from bad to worse and escalated, with both Captain Lockley and President Sheridan refusing to accept Byron's demands. Soon Bester and a Psi Corps blood unit was called in to deal with the situation, with hostages taken by a small group of violent renegades. The hostile situation ended, and Byron was taken into custody before he could reason with his people. But rather than being taken in by the Psycops, Byron and some of his people committed suicide by igniting a chemical spill with PPG, causing an explosion. After losing her lover, she was inspired by him to continue his fight for telepath rights. Using the names and contacts given to her by Byron, Alexander helped as many blips escape the Corps as possible and sent about realizing Byron's dream of a homeworld for telepaths, becoming the de facto leader of the Telepath Underground. Realizing that the movement would need funding, she began contracting with organizations to use the underground telepaths for commercial work. She also negotiated with Ambassador Shakar to sell the Narn regime human telepath DNA, an offer he had originally made to her some 5 years previous, when she had first arrived on Babylon 5. She also decided to start exploring what the Vorlons had done to her. Between using these resources to find a suitable world and build a force that could take on the Psi Corps and free human telepaths from their bondage, Alexander continued to work on Babylon 5 as a commercial telepath, though she charged abnormally high fees for her services. On one such job for Vircato, which saw her going to Zahabar with Dr. Franklin on behalf of the Centauri Republic, during the Centauri War, she encountered a piece of shadow tech, a control device that her Vorlon programming recognized. She and Franklin were able to secure one before fleeing for their lives and bringing it back to Babylon 5. Her activities eventually drew the attention of the Earth Alliance security. The authorities had traced the money used to finance a dozen or so attacks on the Psi Corps right back to Babylon 5. During her arrest, she demonstrated some of the true power she had been hiding up until that point, taking control of the minds of everyone in the Zocalo. It wasn't until ISA President Sheridan, who, because of being touched by the Vorlons, was resistant to the telepathic assault, interceded with a PPG to her head, that she finally stood down and was taken into custody. Michael Garibaldi later visited her in jail to offer her a deal. He agreed to help her build a functioning resistance organization to aid in her fight against the Psi Corps. In exchange, she agreed to return in 2 years' time to remove the telepathic block placed in his mind by Bester. During the negotiation with Garibaldi, she revealed that her altered telepathic abilities far outstretched anything ever seen in a human telepath, and that she was intended as a Vorlon nuclear doomsday weapon. This next portion of Lyta Alexander's history is non-canon and comes from several of the novels. Exploring the Unknown. She left Babylon 5 with Shakar Thursday, September 3rd, 2262, to explore the galaxy. 6 weeks into their travels, they found themselves on Dirk 3, a tiny commercial space station near the Earth Omega colony. While there, Alexander heard rumors about a colony world in Sector 843, settled long ago by telepaths from various worlds, and the two departed aboard the Natath for the 8-day journey to Sector 843. While en route, they came across an abandoned Psi Corps mothership drifting in hyperspace. After boarding the ship, they managed to backtrack the course to an uncharted planet and decided to investigate. After arriving, Shakar and Alexander became separated, though it doesn't take either of them long to discover something is amiss. The planet, as it turns out, was essentially alive. Every plant, insect, and animal telepathically linked in a telesymbiosis with a hive mind bacteria. It comprised a powerful telepathic life form that, while not sentient on its own, facilitated enough neural connections for the entire ecosystem to reach a kind of critical mass and achieve a collective consciousness. After the collective consciousness tried to kill them both, Alexander managed to kill the hive mind in a devastating telepathic assault, ensuring that no others would become trapped on this planet. The Telepath War. By the end of 2264, Alexander returned to find that Garibaldi was as good as his word in creating a force to use against the Psi Corps. In 2265, during the midst of the Telepath War, Alexander and the Resistance discovered that the Psi Corps had reluctantly been able to crack some of Director Vasset's time-locked files on Ganymede, tracing his course into Vorlon space. Quickly summoning Garibaldi, Alexander convinced him to sponsor a mission to intercept, if not beat, Psi Corps to it, believing they had intended to uncover the Vorlon secret to enhancing telepathic abilities. In return, Alexander would finally free Garibaldi of his Azimuth telepathic block. They arrived to find a dead world, littered with the bones of Vorlon test subjects, which had been apparently obliterated some time ago. To their surprise, they discovered Director Vasset, alive and well despite his advanced years. This meeting was cut short when Mr. Diamond, a Psychop, appeared. Following a brief confrontation, Diamond killed Vasset before being gunned down himself, believing that there was nothing left on the world that either the Psi Corps or the Resistance could use. Alexander and Garibaldi departed. Unknown to either of them, the entire planet was a telepathic projection facilitated by the docile, yet immensely powerful Nephilim under Vasset's direction. Not only were both Vasset and thousands of Nephilim still alive, Diamond and his Psychops were now slaves to the Director's will. Alexander was eventually killed during an attack on the Psi Corps facility housing Carolyn Sanderson, the cryogenically frozen lover of Psychop Alfred Bester, in the last days of the Telepath War. Though she never got to see it, the Earth Alliance officially dissolved the Psi Corps and took steps to try to reintegrate telepaths into human society. Hey, thank you for watching the history of Babylon 5. Special thanks to the Babylon fandom page for all information you heard today. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Stop laughing.